God damn it. Did you hear that? Yes. That's the almighty Z-DSP. Damn, I'm loving this module. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to yet another installment of Little Modular. Today I'm quite excited because I have my favorite Eurorack multi-effect back in the studio. This is the Z-DSP by TIPTOPAUDIO, and it can be considered as a milestone of multi-effects, and at this point even a vintage one, because it was one of the first effects of such a nature out there, and it still holds its own because its architecture is really unique and really flexible. This is the second version of the Z-DSP, and I'm really glad that TIPTOPAUDIO have improved some of the features. We have the same engine, but the audio path has been improved. Of course, the graphical layout and design is adjusted to the new line of TIPTOPAUDIO modules. So we have this Kubrick futuristic design, which I really love. But for me personally, the biggest improvement was, please do not laugh, the knobs. Because I used to have the first version and I had to get rid of it, mainly because of the knobs. They were really stiff. I mean, like really stiff, up to the point that I just stopped using this effect, and subconsciously I was avoiding it. Call me a freak, it was just super annoying to me. And now it's perfect, buttery smooth response, just as I would expect. So at this point, I just can't imagine it getting any better. As I mentioned, it's a true stereo multi-effect. True stereo meaning that there are no summers in here. You have totally independent two channels with analog circuitry inside. So it's digital, but it's really warm and smooth, but can be also harsh depending on the algorithm and all the settings. But then you also have a very flexible feedback circuit, tons of CV modulation. You can switch between the programs, and you have different cards like that. Each of the cards holds up to 8 presets, 8 different algorithms, 8 different effects. And there are many cards like that. I have 5 right here. I have the stock Halls of Valhalla, which are just beautiful, lush reverbs. I have the Dragonfly delays, some other stuff right here also. Besides standard effects like different delays and reverbs, you can also get some granular stuff, some physical modeling. And besides having those commercial releases like these, you can also roll your own, meaning that you have this thingy called numbers. It's a USB burner, printer, programmer, call it how you like it. And you can buy it. You can also buy some blank cards, and just program your own algorithms. And if you are not able to program this thing, you can just download some free presets that are floating around on the internet. There is a link on TIPTOPAUDIO site to a forum. You just go there and find the free algorithms. Many of them are really great. Some of them not so great, but they are free. But even with the 2 standard cards that you get with the module, when you buy it, you really have months of fun ahead of you. And that's because the standard programs, standard algorithms you get on these cards are just the tip of the iceberg. If you want, you can get really, really crazy, because you can hack the clock of this module. You can modulate virtually every parameter on this thing. And as you have heard at the beginning of this video, you can go with this thing beyond any imaginable standard effect. Let's just take a look at the panel, and I'll try to explain it to you because it's really easy and logically laid out. You have 2 channels, left and right, and when I describe the left channel, the same parameters apply to the right channel. So on the left we have the input jack right here for the input signal, and the gain knob for this input. Same applies here to the right channel into input and the knob for it, like so. Below we have the feedback in. We have a VC control for the feedback, and the same on the right channel. So feedback in, feedback CV in and the attenuator for it. Below, in the middle here, we have two outputs for channel 1 and channel 2. In the middle is the card slot. You also have clip indicator right here, so if your module clips and if you don't like it, just attenuate the input or ease out with the feedback maybe. You also have the feedback circuit outputs, and these are normaled. So if there's nothing sticked into the input right here, the output goes back to the input, so you can just feed the internal signal back to it, resulting in some self-oscillation resonances or some longer reverb tails, depending on the algorithm that you choose here. If you stick something in the feedback in, then you can treat this as an additional input, or you can just go with the signal out to other module, like a filter, for instance, and then go back from the filter to the feedback in, and then you have additional module in the feedback path of this channel. And you also have this for the second channel, as I mentioned. Here below you have the dry wet knob with the corresponding CV control for this one. And below here you have three inputs that allow you to switch those algorithms, because you can switch them with this beautifully lit button right here, 8 to 1 and then go back to 1. Or you could switch it with the trigger signal right here. With this input you decide whether those algorithms will switch forward or backwards, and here you can apply continuous voltage control like an LFO or an envelope to switch it in yet different way. And of course, last but not least, you have the three main parameters for each of the presets. These are the most relevant parameters for each preset. They change upon different preset. Right now they do not change because I have all the reverbs from the same manufacturer, so we only have decay, tone and chorus for each of the presets. But if you have some different crazier cartridges in here, like Beat Rod or some other funky stuff, then you will have different parameters depending on the algorithm chosen here. And you can also control each of these knobs with the CV signal right here. And then you have the clock input, and that is not your usual clock input, meaning it's not used for beat synchronizing the effects. No. That is the one most important thing that makes this module special. You can just hack it with the external oscillator and turn this thing upside down. This is your entrance to hell. Most of the effects in here are stereo effects. So what you want to do is, if you connect anything in here, make sure you connect both of the inputs, like I did right here. I molded the input to the another in, and I panned them both extremely left and right on my mixer so I can hear all those nice stereo effects. And remember, these are a true stereo effects, so no summing, no big mono, just super nice wide stereo. There are some different crazier effects that have a different arrangement. For instance, you would connect a carrier signal in here and a modulator signal in here. It all depends on the algorithm. So whenever you buy something or you download from the internet, make sure that you read instructions for a particular effect. And many times you will have those instructions on the display. When you insert the card, it will tell you connect something to input 1 and connect something else to input number 2. So just make sure you read those basic instructions. When I turn up the mix knob, you can hear the effect kicking in. Now I can play with those three different parameters: decay, tone, brighter, darker, and chorus. As I mentioned before, I can modulate this. So each of these can be modulated. And only using those three modulations at the same time will animate this effect a lot. Okay. Then we have the feedback on both of the channels, as I mentioned. Now be careful with this because, well, it's a feedback. So depending on the algorithm, it can easily get out of your hands and oscillate and burst with some, like so. You can hear some nice metallic, like on spring reverbs almost. Okay. And of course you can also modulate this. Same way I did with the parameters. Okay. So that's very cool. Okay, so I have changed the cards now and I have this modulated delays inserted. And what I've done here is I have connected the output of the feedback of the left channel to my Geiger counter. But this could be a filter or distortion or anything you really want. And then I got back from my Geiger counter to the feedback in on this channel, which is then molded to the second feedback in. And this is how it sounds. And let's turn up the feedback for both of the channels. Yep. As you can hear, some big reduction heaven. Don't forget that you can modulate this. So if I connect some CV source here to both of the channels, you can get some periodic action. You can connect a sample and hold, for instance, here. So we have different response for each channel. All right. And then we can also switch the effects with the trigger. It's just a square wave and it's inserted to the trigger in here. Now we can see that the presets are changing, right? I also have my manual depth trigger and I can connect it to the second input right here. And now when I hold my trigger, you can see it counts backwards. If I release it, it will again switch those effects forwards. I can also connect a continuous source to the third input right here. Let's say an LFO from Batumi again, and it will just change the effects according to the applied signal. This could be an LFO or an envelope, for instance. Okay. Now let's change the cartridge to the Hydra. This is a multi-tap delays. And I have also changed the source signal. I have disconnected the feedback ins and outs because I want to show you my favorite feature, which is the clock input. As I said before, it's not a clock for syncing your modules to it. It doesn't have anything to do with the triggers or clocks. You input here an oscillator, and it better be a good oscillator, meaning the wider range it offers, the better. Like a Z3000 by TIPTOP is perfect because it goes up to 31 kilohertz, which is a lot, and it's beyond a human hearing, but it's super useful here because some really interesting stuff happens when you go into those super high frequencies or super low. I have connected Rubicon and it does the job greatly. For me, it's best to connect a pulse output or a square. I connect a pulse because it also makes a difference. Not only a frequency, but also the pulse width. Listen how it sounds. And if you turn up the mix up to full, so you won't hear the original sound. Now you have a beautiful drone machine with this incredibly alive texture, which changes totally with even the slightest turn of the frequency on my Rubicon. which is what I'm doing exactly right now. I'm just lowering the frequency on Rubicon, okay, up to the point when you just hear some digital clicks and artifacts. A side note here, sometimes when you go into extremes, this module can freeze, stop responding. In that case, you just need to cycle back to the first algorithm and it should go back to normal. So don't worry about it. Sometimes it's just too much. Okay? If you input just a straight clock in here, you already have a different new universe of sounds. But if you change the width of the pulse, like I'm doing now, it will again influence the whole thing. Now you can also FM this oscillator with other oscillator, like I'm doing right now, and it will again drastically change the response. Not to mention that, of course, you will get different results with different presets and different feedback amounts and feedback arrangements. So if you think about it, it's just bonkers. Can you hear that? I have just changed the frequency on the Rubicon and adjusted the pulse width. I mean, you just hit record and you have some gorgeous spaces and some drums out of it that are so alive. Apply some frequency modulation to the oscillator, which is fed into the clock in, and that's what you get. And let me remind you, this is the this is the dry signal, all right, and that's the wet one. So that's your spectrum of effects. And really, there are not many effects like this on the market. I can't think of anything similar to this. There are many other uses and many different patches and many different hacks and ideas for this module. So this is only my first video for overall review, just to give you the idea of the spectrum of sounds you can achieve with it, just to show you how to operate it on a basic level. But in some next videos, I'll just try to show you my favorite application for it. For now, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you very much for watching. Take care. I'll see you next time.